Good afternoon from Okinawa, Japan, home of OkiSubies. We got a treat for you guys. This is a 2008 GRB STI, but this is the 20th anniversary model. And this car, unfortunately, had bearing failure. 190,000 kilometers. We don't know the history of the car. Owner only had it for about a month before it ended up happening. But we got to build it, and we got to do a 2.1 liter stroker on this. And as we were doing this, we figured it'd be really cool to show you guys how we do it at OkiSubies to build. And we want to show you guys because we feel that it would be beneficial to you guys who are maybe doing your first engine. You can tear it apart, send it to Outfront Motorsports, they do their things, and then you're reassembling. And that's what we do at OkiSubies, and we've been doing it for that way, and it just works out for us. So check out the video, and yeah. This is basically us tearing it apart, figuring out what's wrong, and then sending it out to Outfront Motorsports and then reassembling this beautiful GRB EJ207 dual AVCS drive-by-wire. Amazing setup. Awesome. Check it out.
Yeah,
that's bearing.
maybe.
After Robin delivered the car, we start removing the engine, and that's what you got to do. You got to pull everything apart, and what we're doing is we're looking deeper into what actually went wrong, and we also have to see what are we going to be able to reuse and what else do we have to buy new. And we're going to be figuring out what we're going to be sending out to Outfront Motorsports. And it's also cool to be able to verify certain things like these here. The cylinder walls are a lot thicker from the version 10 and up, so we'll be able to actually physically see that for the first time on the version 10s. But yeah, we're going to keep pulling off the heads and inspect the heads here also. Yep, here's the head. Cams. Everything so far so good. Some markings on this, you cannot feel it at all. This over here is practically nothing. All these are very clean. So far so good. Yeah, we haven't torn apart the short block yet, obviously. There was a noise that sounded like it was very close to rod knock, and I think the owner is right. As we were tearing it apart, yeah, this one here is a little bit grooved up. Let's take a look. Yeah. But definitely everything seems usable. Nothing too crazy, no fingernail nicks or anything like that going on here. But yeah, inside there was like little metal pieces, little shavings, if you will, inside the oil pan as I removed it. Yeah, it definitely seemed like it's bearing failure. But it was we suspected that. So we'll go ahead and put this head back together, flip it over, and then we'll start tearing the block apart and then really assess the damage. All right, guys, so we're back. We have everything disassembled. As we suspected, it is bearing failure. All of them are pretty jacked up at this point. But again, not nearly as bad as what we've seen. I've seen bearings that look like razors when we pull it apart. Crank, it was cylinder 4. You can see there's markings there. But yeah, you know, when you hear the infamous knock sound, like if you see it on the videos or you've heard the car, or maybe even have experienced it, which is and that rod is just shaking back and forth on that crank, is what's making that noise, right? The worse it gets, the worse it gets, the more metal shavings you have throughout your engine. Your oil essentially becomes sandpaper oil, which is why we were checking everything with the heads and whatnot, right? So this customer specifically wants to keep the heads factory. What he plans on doing with the motor, the stock heads are good. There's no point in really going crazy with cams and all that good stuff. He just wants the extra torque. So we will do the 79 millimeter 2.5 liter crank. We will do Outfront Motorsports rods and stroker pistons. The stroker pistons, the biggest thing right here is the wrist pin for the piston. This will actually be higher up to compensate for the additional stroke that we get from the 79 millimeter crank. If you don't do that, the pistons will literally pop out from the top. You definitely will know you did something wrong there. I don't think they have a head gasket big enough to fix that. I don't know what your compression ratio would be anyways, but yeah, so the cylinder walls are good. Not that we were worried about that with bearing failure, just something that you obviously would check as you were rebuilding the motor. So the good news is everything that we plan on reusing is reusable. That's great. So another great example of addressing the issue quickly is always good. Pull over, get it towed, do whatever you got to do to run the engine as least as you possibly can to prevent further damage. But yeah, we will box everything up. Yeah, the motor had 190,000 kilometers on it, but everything is good. But we'll box everything up, send it out to Outfront Motorsports, let them do their thing, and then we'll send back and we'll show you what they've taken care of, and then what we do. And hopefully it helps you if this is your first time building, or even if you've done it multiple times. It's still a great method. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a good method. It works for us. It cuts down time. So yeah, it's great. So it works out. But yeah. All right. So last night, as I was tearing the motor apart and whatnot, I was talking to you guys about how the cylinder walls are thicker. I just want to do a quick comparison, right? So the version 10 and up, the GRB version 10 and up, EJ207, you can see this is a little bit thinner right here, but the thicker walls. This is a block that we just got back from Outfront Motorsports. This is a version 7. You can see the cylinder walls are thinner. This portion is thicker, but the cylinder walls in general all the way around are thicker on the version 10. So that's pretty cool. All right, good afternoon from Okinawa, Japan, home of OkiSubies. We are back, and we have all the goodies back from Outfront Motorsports. Kind of got it separated, really just from about right here. Basically what we have Outfront Motorsports do, and then what we end up doing. Again, this is a video really of just more importantly the process of what we do and why we do it. Us being in Okinawa, Japan, if we were to mess up, for example, the piston rings, we would have to order. It takes another week. We just want good efficiency, and we want to get the cars in and out. And so what we do, we send 3 boxes out to Outfront Motorsports, 2 heads and the block. When the heads come back, they're already all done. The bucket clearance, everything. This setup, cams, springs, and valves are stock. Everything else, like the seals, are all redone, but the whole heads are completely done, resurfaced. We don't really have to worry about the heads except for just double checking the work, making sure everything is good to go. And next, we'll look at pistons. Even the piston rings, they label them for you. 1, 3, 4, 2, 4. Well, I just got them separated by side, but and they do the ring gaps. So as you're putting them on the pistons, you slide them in on the top. You just check them, make sure everything is good to go. You shouldn't have to do any grinding. You don't have to worry about messing them up or anything. It's just quick that way. The block also, right here, it is bored out to the pistons that we purchased from Outfront Motorsports, right? So after we send them the 3 boxes, they just start sending us all kinds of goodies. The pistons, if we want ARP head studs, depending. Sometimes we order ARP head studs and bearings from Wandering Gaijin too. I think for Robin's engine, this one specifically, we ordered through Outfront Motorsports. So pistons from Outfront Motorsports, then they actually do the ring gap. They order the pistons, for example, reason, right? So if we buy the pistons and we buy 92.5 thinking it needs to be bored out 0.5. But in this case, I think it was actually 93 that it needed to be bored out. So without us purchasing the pistons, it's happened before where, hey, these pistons are too small, we need to bore them up a little bit bigger, so we had to get another set of pistons, right? So purchasing the pistons through them after they do the verification and checking ensures that we get the right pistons the first time. Yeah, case halves, board, hone, everything's good to go. Another good example too, one of the bolts, not helicoil or tap and die, but anyways, one of the threads were damaged and they fixed that, right? We didn't have to worry about that. Again, the block comes back, it's good to go. We also get the case half bolts from Outfront Motorsports, right? So they just come like this. There are seals that go in on the coolant jackets, where it goes in where the coolant jackets, there's some seals. First time I ordered those from Subaru, they didn't come, so I ordered them again, and they're actually like $2 a piece. But if you order the case half bolts from Outfront Motorsports and they don't come with those seals, the reason why is it comes in the actual gasket kit, right? So this is the GRB. Because it's a JDM engine, we have to get the gasket kit from Subaru Japan. No big deal. This one was a bearing failure, so we did go with a new oil pump. So they're only like Ichiman Sanzen, it's like 130 bucks or something like that. Very affordable. It's kind of like one of those why not things. Again, we're doing a stroker, so it is a 2.5 liter crank. The nitrated crank, same thing that you guys are using in the States for the USDM 2.5 STIs. A little bit less models that come with this crank, but we can still get them from Subaru. Again, because it was bearing failure, another cool service. This is the first time that we use it. But Outfront Motorsports, you can send them the cam gears and they will tear them apart, clean them. Now, I have to look at the invoice and I can't remember, but basically they come back better than factory. They do something with them. There's an upgrade in there. But yeah, Gates timing belt. But this is basically the process. So we'll start putting it together and kind of showing you the quick verifications, but it's a super quick process. Our job basically, after we get that from Outfront Motorsports, is the torque specs and the bearing clearances. Just make sure that all the bearings are good. So bearings we have like we have like the size up and extra rod bearings and main bearings and things like that, just in case if we need different setups, because that's what we're doing in-house. And then we put the whole thing together, of course. So yeah, pulling the engine, tearing it apart, sending it to Outfront Motorsports, having them do a lot, especially if it's your first engine or you're not doing a lot of them and you don't want to get a bunch of these different tools to do this. This is a great option. Just be specific with them, they'll be specific with you, and the ball was rolling real quick once we talked with Outfront Motorsports. It was very smooth and very easy. But yeah, start getting this thing put together and get it in the car. Alright, so we are doing some measurements here for the rods, and I just figured I would share basically the differences. A lot of, you see the standard bearings and then the one size up bearings and things like that. And the bearings, we've used the standards, right, in these two, and every single time our crank is 2.14690, right? So we set this to 2.14690. That's the diameter of the crank on the rods, right? And then you put this in there, and what you do is you zero it out. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but you're zeroing it out, okay? So anyways, but what I want to show you is the standards on this setup, right? Each dot is 0.005, so each line. So when you get to the second line, you're at 0.001. Okay, the standards are at 0.001. That is tighter than what we want to be. So let's look over to this one right here has the plus 001 one size more clearance, so +1. So if we look at this one, right, we're actually a little bit over 0.002. So just as advertised, there is differences, right? But just as advertised, that's +1 up. So that puts us more around 2. We don't want to go that high up, so what we're going to end up doing is we're going to be using a standard half with a +001 up, and that should get us, these are just both standards, but you get the idea. And that's going to get us in the area that we're going to be shooting for. So keep that in mind. If you're going to be doing the bearings, you're going to be doing the measurements and whatnot, and that's the main thing that you're going to be doing. I think these ones are like, each set is only like 50, 60 bucks for a full set of rod, right? So you could buy standards and one size up, and you basically have, most likely you're going to be able to do those. You're going to have 2 engines to deal with there. So we're going to mix match them and get right where we want them to be. Perfect for each one. And this is after mixing the two together. You could see everything is labeled and numbered, and even if you do multiple engines, it's very easy to understand which heads go with what block. Everything is resurfaced and honed and bored, and we get the clearances for the rods and get those on. Check the main bearing clearances, put the crank in there, slap some Fujibond and torque it together, and then we get the pistons in. And then we went with ARP head studs, put the head gasket on and then the heads, torque everything down. There's a long block completed. This part is pretty interesting, good to know. The oil pumps, we've pulled apart engines and there be absolutely nothing wrong with the engine. We're just building them, but we've noticed that some of those bolts are backed out. So when we build engines, or whenever we can, we take the oil pumps and we remove those screws and we use blue Loctite and we just tighten them down. All screens removed from the AVCS banjo bolts. Brand new copper washers with the master gasket kit also. And this portion is the air pump delete. We did order some plates. Unfortunately, there was some complications to the website and the plates were not coming. The material is stainless steel. We had stainless steel plates laying around, so we just cut out the material and made the shapes. And we TIG welded it together. It worked out well. As you could see, you could do it this way if you wanted to, but the time that it takes to do it and the plates being only like 40 bucks, if you can, I would just recommend ordering the plates. It's just so much easier. We do plan on installing a Spec C oil cooler, so we went with the Spec C water pump. Similar to the automatic water pumps, it just doesn't have the hose going to the oil cooler. Went with the beautiful IAG oil pickup and baffle. And look at that, starting to look like an engine. When it comes to the timing belt, the Company 23 tools are a lifesaver. They hold together the intake and exhaust cam so you can install a timing belt at your own pace. Highly recommend those. We did end up doing TGV deletes by removing the butterfly flaps and welding up the holes. I didn't really like the outcome and it took a lot of time, so honestly I would recommend getting the aftermarket ones or even the OEM platforms of the version 7 Bug-Eye STI and the JDM Foresters come with no TGVs and their top feeds, so those would work too. Coming along real nice. We have the brand new oil pan, we have headers, engine fully assembled, went in real smooth. We did keep the sensor for the pump just on the housing and installed in there. It's going to be underneath the top mount intercooler, so we felt this would be cleaner than zip tying it back there, so that's just the way that we decided to do it. Alright, so we have the engine fully installed. This is the 2.1 liter stroker, and we have pretty much all bolt-ons. And we're going to start it up for the first time. It's kind of hard to see, but we actually have the crank sensor unplugged right now. It's going to be interesting. It's the first time for us doing the button start, right? So usually you can just crank, turn it over, and make sure that you have oil pressure beforehand. So we might have to push the button a few times, I guess, but let's figure it out. All right, so we got the crank sensor plugged back in. First start for Robin's 2.1 liter stroker build. Got oil pressure there, that's good. All right, dropping the phone, but it's okay, we're gonna leave that in there. Yep, everything is good. We do have a check engine light. So the S flashes for the SI drive because we have a check engine light, but we also did the evap and TGV deletes, so most likely it's just those check engine lights, so we'll have to delete those, but awesome. All right, we're driving Robin's car. No check engine lights. Just doing the 50 mile break in, 50 kilometer, however we're gonna do it, I'm not sure, but yeah, we deleted all the check engine lights for the TGVs and the air pump, and now we're just basically keeping it under boost, watching the oil, doing as much engine braking as we can, and start doing these oil changes so that we can start getting it tuned. This time we're gonna use Shinji Tune. Whenever we do E-Tunes, we do Shinji Tune. This one right here, 32-bit ECU. We're running 2.1 liter stroker. It's dual AVCS, so we're pretty familiar with the 16-bit platforms now, but 32-bit, I think we're gonna go ahead and continue with the Shinji. So we already got the okay, and he's gonna be sending us the revisions here. So doing some data logs right now also, but yeah.